It was my daughter Rebecca's 45th birthday, and I showed up at her house early with the cake I'd ordered. Special delivery from her favorite bakery, $200. No joke, but for my only child, nothing was too expensive. I knocked on the door with a smile, expecting to see her face light up like it did when she was a little girl. But when she opened it, her expression was one of total annoyance. "Oh, it's you," she muttered without even looking me in the eye. "Happy birthday, my love," I said, holding out the cake with the candles already in place. "I brought your favorite chocolate with strawberries, just like when you were a kid." Rebecca sighed deeply like my presence was a whole chore. "Mom, we need to talk," she said dryly, letting me inside without so much as a thank you for the cake. We sat down in the living room of her beautiful home, the same house that I had completely financed when she and David got married. It had been $50,000 that I'd pulled from my life savings, money I'd saved penny by penny, working double shifts as a nurse for 40 years. "You know, Mom," Rebecca began with that chilly tone she's picked up over the past few years, "I've been thinking a lot about my birthday, about presents, and about what would truly make me happy." I nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, my love. Tell me what you want, and I'll get it for you. A trip, some jewelry, maybe even that new car you mentioned." Rebecca looked me straight in the eye, and what I saw there chilled me to the bone. Pure contempt. "The one thing I'd love most as a birthday present," she said slowly, savoring each word, "is for you to just die." The world stopped. I felt like someone just ripped my heart from my chest. Her words echoed in my ears on an endless loop. My daughter, my own daughter, had wished for my death as a birthday gift. "What? What did you just say?" I managed to whisper, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "You heard me," she continued with a coldness that cut through me like knives. "I'm tired of you, Mom. Tired of your constant calls, your unexpected visits, of you always being here bothering me. My life would be so much easier and happier if you would just disappear." My hands were shaking uncontrollably. 72 years of living, 45 years of being her mother, and I never thought I would hear those words come out of her mouth. "Rebecca," I managed to say between sobs, "I'm your mother. I've given you everything. I've sacrificed everything for you." "Exactly," she interrupted, standing up from the sofa. "And that's why you're suffocating me. I can't breathe with your constant presence. I need freedom. I need you to let me live my life without your drama and your emotional needs." The $200 cake was still in my hands, the candles beginning to melt. Everything I had dreamed for that day, hugs, laughter, maybe a family dinner, went up in smoke. "But honey," I tried one more time, "I just want to be close to you, to be a part of your life. You're all I have." "And that's exactly the problem," she replied, crossing her arms. "The fact that I'm all you have. Go live your own life and leave me alone." I got up from the sofa, my legs trembling, carrying that cake that now felt like a mockery. "I can't believe you're saying this to me," I murmured, "after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done?" She laughed sarcastically. "Mom, everything you've done has been for your own benefit. To feel needed, to have control over my life. But I'm not a little girl anymore." I walked toward the door, feeling as if each step was costing me years of my life. At the threshold, I turned one last time, hoping to see some regret in her eyes, some sign of the sweet little girl she once was. But I only saw impatience. Impatience for me to leave so she could finally celebrate her birthday without the nuisance I represented. "Happy birthday, Rebecca," I murmured, and I walked out of that house, closing the door behind me. I didn't know at that moment that it would be the last time I would ever enter that house as the mother who had sacrificed everything. Because what my daughter didn't know was that she had just awakened something in me that had been dormant for decades. I arrived at my small apartment with trembling legs and a broken heart. The $200 cake ended up in the trash, candles slumped over like my spirit. I sat on my old sofa, the same sofa where I had nursed Rebecca as a baby, read her stories for years, and cried tears of happiness every time she called me Mom. How had I ended up here? How could my own daughter, the child I had carried for 9 months, wish for my death with such coldness? I began to remember everything, absolutely everything I had done for her over the past 45 years. When she was 3 and got pneumonia, I worked triple shifts at the hospital to pay for her medicine. It was $200 in antibiotics that my insurance didn't cover, money I got from selling my late mother's jewelry. When she turned 16 and wanted to go to the prom, I worked entire weekends for 4 months to buy her that pink dress that cost $800. I remember how her eyes sparkled when she tried it on. "Thank you, Mom. You're the best in the world," she had said, hugging me tight. In college, when she changed her major for the 3rd time, I paid for every semester without a single complaint, $42,000, all in, money I got by taking out a second mortgage on my house. "Don't worry, honey," I would tell her every time she called me crying. "Your education is the most important thing." When she married David, I organized and paid for the entire wedding, $35,000, so she could have the wedding of her dreams. The most elegant ballroom in the city, the most beautiful flowers, the menu. She chose without worrying about the price. "I want my princess to have everything," I told her, signing check after check. And then came the house. That very house where she had just humiliated me. When Rebecca and David decided they wanted to buy their first property, I didn't hesitate for a second. "Don't worry about the down payment," I told them. "I'll take care of it." It was $150,000 from my life savings, the money I had been saving for my retirement. But it didn't end there. When the twins arrived 5 years ago, I became the free babysitter. Every night, Rebecca wanted to go out with David. Every time they had plans and needed someone to watch the kids, there I was, not charging a dime, happy to help my daughter have the life she had always dreamed of. When David lost his job last year, who paid the mortgage for 8 months? Me, $16,000 that I took from my pension, money that meant eating rice and beans for weeks just to stretch my income. And when the twins needed braces, another $4,000 that I covered without a second thought. "Don't worry," I told them, seeing their distressed faces. "That's what grandparents are for." I got up from the sofa and went to my desk where I kept all the receipts, all the proof of every single penny I had spent on my daughter and her family. Boxes and boxes of documents I had kept, not out of suspicion, but out of pride, because it made me proud to remember everything I had been able to do for them. I started doing the math, raising Rebecca from birth until she was on her own. Approximately $200,000. College, $42,000. The wedding, $35,000. The down payment on the house, $150,000. Mortgage payments when David was unemployed, $16,000. The twins' braces, $4,000 birthday, and Christmas gifts over all those years. At least $10,000 more. The total was devastating, over $460,000, almost $500,000, that I had invested in my daughter's happiness. And all of it to hear that her greatest desire was for me to die. Tears fell onto the papers as I added and subtracted. If I had put that money in a savings account with compound interest, today I would have more than $600,000. I could be living in a nice house, traveling the world, enjoying a comfortable retirement instead of counting pennies in this tiny apartment. But no, I had chosen to invest in love. I had chosen to believe that the money spent on my daughter was money well spent, that every sacrifice was worth it, because in the end, I would have a daughter who loved me and would take care of me in my old age. How foolish that sounds now. I picked up the phone and dialed Rebecca's number. I needed to hear her voice one more time, to confirm she had really said those terrible words. "What do you want now, Mom?" she answered with annoyance after the 5th ring. "Rebecca, I need to know if you really meant what you said to me today," I asked in a trembling voice. "Of course I meant it," she replied without a hint of remorse. "Mom, it's time you understood that I need space. Your obsession with me isn't healthy." "Obsession?" I repeated, incredulous. "You call a mother's love obsession?" "Yes, exactly that. And I hope after today you finally get the message. I need you to respect my boundaries and let me live my life." I hung up the phone without a goodbye. There was no misunderstanding. My daughter truly believed that my love was a burden, that my presence in her life was a problem she needed to solve. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering every beautiful moment we had shared, every hug, every "I love you, Mom" that had come from her lips. Had it all been a lie? Or had I simply raised a daughter who had become so selfish she couldn't see beyond her own needs? At 3 in the morning, something changed inside me. The sadness began to transform into something different, into anger, into indignation, into the clear understanding that I had been used, manipulated, and discarded like a used tissue. My daughter wanted me to die. Well, maybe it was time to give her exactly what she asked for. The next day, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The sadness had given way to something more powerful: determination. If my daughter wanted me to disappear from her life, I would, but not in the way she expected. I put on my best clothes and went out with a defined purpose. First stop, the bank where I had a joint account with Rebecca for her house's emergency expenses. That account I had opened just in case, and into which I had deposited $20,000 for any unforeseen events that might arise. "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson," greeted the manager, Mr. Martinez, who had known me for years. "How can I help you today?" "I want to close joint account number 45872891, I said with a smile that he interpreted as kindness, but which was, in reality, pure steel. "Are you sure? That account has a considerable balance of $20,000, he warned, checking his screen. "Completely sure." "Transfer all of it to my personal account," I replied, signing the papers with a steady hand. Seeing those $20,000 return to my personal account gave me a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. It was only the beginning. Next stop, the mortgage loan office. During the past year, when David was unemployed, I had co-signed their mortgage. That meant if they couldn't pay, the responsibility fell on me. But it also meant I had rights to that property. "Mrs. Johnson," the loan officer, Ms. Williams, greeted me. "What brings you here?" "I want to review the mortgage contract where I appear as a co-signer," I explained. "I need to understand exactly what my rights and obligations are." While she looked for the documents, I remembered the day I signed those papers. Rebecca had cried with emotion. "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what we'd do without you." "You're our savior," she had said, hugging me tight. David had also thanked me, promising they would never have late payments. "Here are the documents," Ms. Williams said, placing a thick folder in front of me. "As a co-signer, you are responsible for the payments if the primary holders cannot make them. But you also have the right to reclaim the property if you believe the debtors won't be able to fulfill their obligations." "Exactly," I said, examining the papers carefully. "Is there a problem with the payments?" she asked with professional concern. "I'm evaluating the situation," I replied, putting a copy of all the documents in my bag. "What would I have to do if I decided to exercise my rights as co-signer?" "You would have to demonstrate there's a risk of default, or that there have already been significant delays. In your case, I see you covered 8 months of payments last year, which is already sufficient evidence that the primary holders lack financial stability." Perfect. David had lost his job again last week. Information Rebecca had given me without thinking about the implications. She thought she was asking for help indirectly, but what she was really giving me were the weapons for my revenge. I left that office with a smile. My dear daughter had no idea of the storm that was brewing. Third stop, my personal lawyer, Mr. Anel Adams, a 70-year-old man who had been a friend of my late husband's. He knew my entire family situation and had witnessed my sacrifices for Rebecca for decades. "Julieta," he greeted me warmly, "what brings you to my office? It's not common to see you here." "Anel, I need your help with something very important," I told him, sitting in front of his desk. "I want to completely change my will." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Has something happened with Rebecca?" I told him everything. Every hurtful word, every moment of contempt, the coldness with which she had wished for my death on her own birthday. Anel listened in silence, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "Julieta," he said finally, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I never thought Rebecca was capable of something like that after everything you've done for her. Me neither, I sighed. But I've made my decision. I want to change my will and leave everything to a charitable organization. I also want to set up a trust fund for my grandchildren, but Rebecca can't have access to that money until they turn 25. That can be done, Annelle nodded, taking notes. Do you also want to change the beneficiaries of your life insurance? Of course. Anything with Rebecca's name on it, I want to change. My daughter wants me to die, but when I do, she's not going to receive a single penny from me. We spent 2 hours reviewing all my legal documents, my $100,000 life insurance policy, my savings, my apartment, my investments. Everything that had once been designated for Rebecca would now go to the Orphans Foundation, where I had volunteered for years. There's something else, I said as we were finishing. I want you to prepare all the documents to reclaim the house where Rebecca lives. As the co-signer of the mortgage, I have rights. And her husband just lost his job again. Annelle's eyes lit up with understanding. Now I see where you're going with all of this. Are you sure you want to go that far? Completely sure, I replied with a determination that surprised even myself. My daughter told me her life would be easier if I disappeared. Well, I'm going to disappear, but first, I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what it means to live without me and without everything I've done for her. When I left Annelle's office, it was already dark. I walked through the streets of my neighborhood feeling renewed, like waking from a long, heavy sleep. For 45 years, I had lived for Rebecca, sacrificed my own dreams and desires to give her everything she wanted, but no more. I got back to my apartment and poured myself a glass of wine, something I hadn't done in years. Toasting myself felt new but incredibly liberating. I took out my phone and dialed a number I'd saved months ago but never dared to use. A travel agency specializing in retirees that offered packages for living abroad. Good evening. This is Julietta Johnson, I said when they answered. I saw your promotion about living in Switzerland. Could you send me complete information? Of course, Mrs. Johnson. Switzerland is very popular among our clients. We have several programs, from temporary stays to permanent residency. What kind of information do you need? Everything. Lay it all out for me, I replied without hesitation. I want to know everything about how a 72-year-old person can start a new life in Switzerland. After hanging up, I stood at the window looking out at the city where I had lived my entire life. Soon, all of this would be just a memory. My daughter had asked for my disappearance as a birthday gift, and I was going to grant it to her, in the most spectacular way possible. What Rebecca didn't know was that her wish was about to become her worst nightmare. The next few days were a roller coaster of emotions and secret preparations. Every morning I woke up with a mix of pain and determination that pushed me forward with my plan, heart sore, head clear. It was as if I had woken from a long slumber where I had lived only to please my daughter, and now, finally, I was living for myself. On Wednesday morning, my phone rang. It was Rebecca. For a moment, my heart sped up. Maybe she had reconsidered. Maybe she'd apologize for the terrible words she said. How naive I still was. Mom, she said in that cold voice she had adopted lately, I need you to do me a favor. Not even a hello or how are you. She went straight to the point, like I was her personal assistant. What do you need? I asked, curious to see how far her audacity would go. The twins have a presentation at school on Friday, and David and I have an important work dinner. Could you watch them that night? The irony was wild. The same woman who had wished for my death as a birthday gift was now asking me to watch her children as if nothing had happened, as if I were available 24/7 on call. I can't, I replied simply. What do you mean you can't? She asked, genuinely surprised, clearly not used to me saying no. I have other plans, I lied, with a smile she couldn't see. What plans could you possibly have? She asked with that condescending tone that cut deep, as if at 72 years old I didn't have the right to a life of my own. Plans that are none of your business, I replied, keeping my calm. Find another sitter. But Mom, I can't get a sitter on such short notice. Besides, since when do you charge me to watch your own grandchildren? There it was, the emotional manipulation she had used on me for years. But this time it wouldn't work. Since you told me your greatest gift would be for me to die, I answered with coldness. If you want me to disappear from your life, I'm starting now. There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, Rebecca let out a sarcastic laugh. Seriously? You're going to punish me like you're a little brat? She said. I thought after a few days the drama would be over. It's not drama, Rebecca. It's respect for your wish. You wanted me to disappear, so that's what I'll do. Fine, she said with annoyance. If you want to be that childish, that's on you. But don't come crying later when you're lonely. She hung up without saying goodbye. Perfect. Every interaction confirmed I was making the right decision. That afternoon, I went to the bank again, this time to do something I never thought I would. I withdrew most of my savings in cash, $30,000 in crisp bills, and put it in an envelope I stored in my personal safe, the money I'd need for my new life in Switzerland. I also called the travel agency and confirmed my trip, a flight to Zurich for next Tuesday with the option to extend my stay indefinitely. The initial cost was $5,000, money I paid without blinking. It was the most expensive and most intelligent investment I had made in years. On Thursday morning, I received an unexpected visit. It was my neighbor, Elvira, a 68-year-old woman who lived next door and with whom I had become friends over the past 5 years. Julieta, she said, sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee. You look different these days. Has something happened? Elvira had been a silent witness to all my sacrifices for Rebecca. She had seen me cancel plans to rush over whenever my daughter needed me. She had seen the bags of expensive food I bought to take to Rebecca while I ate canned soup to save money. I told her everything, every painful detail of what happened on Rebecca's birthday, and all the plans I had been making during the week. My God, Julieta, she breathed, eyes filling with tears. I can't believe Rebecca would say something so cruel to you after everything you've done for her. The worst part is she said it like it was normal, I explained, as if I were a nuisance that needed to be eliminated. And you're really going to Switzerland? Yes, I replied firmly. I've already bought the ticket. I'm leaving on Tuesday. Elvira took my hands kindly. You know you have my full support, right? What Rebecca did is unforgivable. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice. I'm going to need your help with something very important. I explained my complete plan, how I wanted Rebecca to believe I had truly died, at least for a while. Elvira would be my accomplice, the person who would find my empty apartment and my farewell letter. It's brilliant, she murmured with a wry little smile. That ungrateful child is finally going to understand what it means to lose you. Will you help me? Of course I will. Honestly, I think it's exactly what Rebecca needs to wake up. That night, I worked on the most important letter of my life, the letter Rebecca would find on her table, the one that would change everything forever. I wrote and rewrote every word, making sure it said exactly what I needed it to say. My dear Rebecca, the letter began, you asked me, as a birthday gift, to disappear from your life, and I have decided to grant your wish. When you read this letter, I will already be far from here, starting the life I should have lived years ago instead of burning it all down for you. I kept writing for hours, itemizing every dollar, every sacrifice, every door I closed on myself because I was always available for her. But it wasn't a bitter letter. It was meant to teach. I wanted her to understand exactly what she had lost. Along with this letter, you will find all the legal documents I signed this week, I continued. The updated will, the cancellation of your health insurance I've been paying, the notification that, as the co-signer of your mortgage, I have decided to exercise my rights due to David's shaky employment, and the cancellation of all the financial benefits you received from me. It was a 23-page letter that meticulously detailed everything that was going to change in her life now that I had disappeared, just as she wanted. Your life will be much easier without me, the letter ended. But it will also be much more expensive. Hope the math adds up. On Friday night, as I was packing my most important belongings into 2 suitcases, Rebecca called. I didn't answer. She called 3 more times and I let the phone ring. I had nothing left to say to her. The next day, Saturday, David showed up at my door. He looked exhausted and desperate. "Julieta," he said in a pleading voice, "Rebecca told me what happened between you two. I know what she said was wrong, but please don't do this to our family." "Do what?" I asked, playing innocent. "Stop helping us. Just withdrawing from our lives like this. The kids need you. We need you." How interesting. When Rebecca wanted to get rid of me, I was a nuisance. But once they realized everything I did for them, suddenly they needed me. "David," I said calmly, "your wife was very clear. My presence is a burden she no longer wants to bear. I'm just respecting her wishes." "But Julieta, you know how Rebecca gets when she's mad." "She didn't mean it." "Oh, she didn't?" I asked. "Because she sounded pretty convincing when she wished for my death as a birthday gift." David lowered his head. He had no argument for the indefensible. "Please," he insisted, "give me a chance to fix this. I'll talk to Rebecca. I'll make her understand how wrong she is." "It's too late for that," I replied, slowly closing the door. "Kiss my grandchildren for me." Sunday was my last day in that city. I spent the morning walking through the places that had mattered most in my life. The hospital where I worked for 40 years, the park where I took Rebecca as a child, the church where I married her father. It was my silent goodbye to a life I had lived for others. On Monday, I would begin a life I would finally live for myself. On Sunday night, I couldn't sleep, not from nerves or regret, but from a strange emotion I hadn't felt in decades, the anticipation of an adventure. At 72 years old, I was about to begin the life I had always dreamed of but never dared to live. At 5 a.m. on Monday, Elvira knocked on my door, just as we'd arranged. She brought fresh coffee and a knowing smile that filled me with energy. "Ready for your great escape?" she asked, winking. "More than ready," I replied, carrying my 2 suitcases to the door. "Do you have the spare keys to my apartment?" "Here they are," she said, showing me the set I'd given her the night before. "And I also have the letter for Rebecca and all the legal documents you're going to leave on her table." We had planned everything meticulously. Elvira would wait until Wednesday to go to Rebecca's apartment and deliver the documents, pretending she found my place empty and got worried when I disappeared. She would be the one to break the news that I was gone for good. "Remember," I said as we called a cab, "you have to act very worried. Tell her I didn't answer the phone for 2 days, that you knocked and I didn't respond, and that when you used the emergency keys, you found the apartment empty and the letter on the table. Don't you worry, Julieta. I was a drama teacher for 30 years. I've still got the chops," Elvira said with a mischievous smile. The cab arrived right at 6 a.m. As they loaded my suitcases, I took one last look at my apartment. I'd lived there 15 years, yet I didn't feel nostalgic. It felt like I was finally freeing myself from a prison I built with my own hands. "To the airport?" the driver asked. "To the airport," I confirmed, and those 2 words felt like the start of my new existence. During the 40-minute ride, I thought about everything I was leaving behind. My volunteer work at the hospital, my routines, the constant worry about Rebecca and her problems. But I also thought about everything waiting for me. The freedom to make my own decisions, to spend my money on myself, to live without the constant weight of my daughter's demands. At the airport, while I waited for my flight, I got 3 calls from Rebecca that I didn't answer. Then a text. "Mom, you're being ridiculous. The kids are asking about you. Call me." I deleted it without replying. Fascinating how now that I wasn't available 24/7, she suddenly needed me. The flight to Zurich was long but peaceful. For the first time in years, no one knew where I was. No one could call to ask for favors, money, or time. The feeling of freedom was intoxicating, like getting my lungs back. During the 12-hour trip, I wrote in my journal every detail of the last week, every emotion, every decision that led me here. I wanted to remember exactly what it felt like to free myself from a toxic relationship, even when that relationship was with my own daughter. I arrived in Zurich on Tuesday night local time. A representative from the travel agency waited at the airport with a sign bearing my name. He was young and kind and spoke perfect English. "Mrs. Johnson," he greeted me with a genuine smile. "Welcome to Switzerland. Ready for a new adventure?" "More than ready," I replied. For the first time in weeks, my smile was completely real. Klaus took me to a beautiful furnished apartment in the center of Zurich that he'd rented for 1 month, while I decided if I wanted to stay permanently. It was small but cozy, with windows overlooking a lovely park and a partial view of the lake. "Here's all the information about the city," Klaus said, handing me a thick folder. "Places to eat, activities for people your age, German classes, social groups. I've also scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor for tomorrow afternoon to help with the paperwork if you decide to stay." That night, I slept better than I had in years. No phone to ring, no one needing anything, no responsibilities beyond taking care of myself. On Wednesday morning, I woke early and went out to explore. I had breakfast at a charming cafe by the lake. I bought fresh flowers for my temporary apartment. And for the first time in decades, I spent money on something completely unnecessary, a beautiful silk scarf that cost $100, simply because I liked it, with zero guilt or calculations about whether that money should go to my daughter. As I walked the streets of Zurich, I mentally added up how much I'd spent on Rebecca in just the last 5 years. The mortgage payments when David was unemployed, the twins' braces, the constant gifts, gas to go watch the kids, the food I always brought. At least $50,000. $50,000 I could have used to travel, to live comfortably, to tick off the dreams I'd postponed for decades. Instead, I gave it to a daughter who saw my love as a burden and my presence as a nuisance. At 2 in the afternoon Zurich time, I calculated it was 8 a.m. back home. Elvira would be getting ready to go to Rebecca's and deliver the letter that would change everything. I sat on a bench by the lake and waited. I knew that in a few hours, my phone would start ringing like crazy. Rebecca would finally understand what it meant to truly lose me. At 5 p.m., my phone started to vibrate. It was Rebecca. I let it ring out. Immediately it rang again. "Rebecca." This time I answered. "Mom," she screamed, voice cracking. "Where are you?" "Elvira came to the house with a letter from you. She said you disappeared. What's going on?" "Hello, Rebecca," I replied calmly, watching the lake shimmer. "Did you read the letter yet?" "Yes, I read it. Are you crazy? How could you do this to us? Where are you?" "I'm exactly where I need to be," I said. "Far away from you, just like you wanted. But I didn't want this. I didn't want you to actually leave. I was just angry. I didn't mean it." There it was, Rebecca's classic move. Minimize the damage, make me feel guilty for reacting to her cruelty. "You didn't mean it when you said your greatest birthday wish was for me to die?" I asked. "Because you sounded pretty convinced." "It was just, I was frustrated. David lost his job again. The kids are acting up at school. I'm so stressed. I shouldn't have taken it out on you." "You're right. You shouldn't have. But it's done and words don't go back in your mouth. But Mom, please come back. We need you. I need you." How interesting. Now she needed me. Now that she'd read exactly what she'd lost. Now that she knew the house was at risk. Now that she understood she'd have to pay for her own insurance and find a sitter for the twins. "Do you need me?" I asked. "Or do you need my money?" A long silence. "I need you," she finally murmured, but it didn't sound convincing. "Rebecca, for 45 years I lived for you," I said. "I sacrificed my dreams, my money, my time, my chances. And when I finally needed to feel loved and valued, you told me you'd rather I was dead. Those words broke my heart in a way I can't fix. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." Sorry isn't enough, Rebecca. The damage is done. And honestly, maybe it was the best thing you could have said, because it snapped my eyes open. I've been living wrong. What do you mean? I mean that for the first time in decades, I'm living for me and it feels amazing. Where are you, Mom? Please tell me, she begged, voice choked with tears. The kids are asking about their grandma. They don't understand why you haven't come. Fascinating how, now that I wasn't available, the grandchildren suddenly missed me. All those years I canceled plans to watch them, bought them expensive gifts, took them to the park while Rebecca went shopping. It was just expected. Now that I was gone, the absence was loud. "The kids will be fine," I said, looking toward the mountains. "They're resilient. What they'll learn is that actions have consequences, and hurtful words can break relationships for good." "But Mom, you can't just disappear like this. What if something happens to you? What if you get sick? How will we know?" Now she cared about my well-being. How convenient. "Rebecca, in the last 5 years, I had 3 episodes of high blood pressure that sent me to the hospital. Know how many times you visited?" "None. You always had something more important to do." "That's not true," she protested weakly. "It is. The first time I called you from the ER, you couldn't come. Hair appointment. The second time it was David's birthday. You were celebrating. The third time, you didn't even answer the phone." The silence on the line told me she remembered every incident. I thought it wasn't serious," she murmured. "Of course, because my health was never the priority. But my checks were. It's not about the money," Rebecca yelled. "It's about you. I miss you, Mom." "Do you miss me?" I asked. "Or do you miss having someone on call to fix your problems?" I hung up without waiting for an answer. It rang again immediately, but this time I turned it off. I wanted peace for my first night of freedom. That night, I had dinner alone at an elegant lakeside restaurant. I ordered the most expensive dish, salmon with caviar for $80, and finished a bottle of French wine. Years since I'd treated myself like that, always thinking the money might be better used for Rebecca. The next day, Thursday, I turned my phone back on and found 47 missed calls and 23 texts, all from Rebecca and David. The messages slid from pleading to threats. "Please, Mom, answer. We're worried. If you don't answer, we're calling the police. We already called the police. They said there's nothing they can do because you left a letter. The bank called us. You canceled the joint account. How are we supposed to pay for emergencies?" It was wildly revealing how concern for my well-being morphed into panic about money. I answered just one message. "I'm fine. I'm exactly where I need to be. Don't look for me." The reply came in under 5 minutes. "You don't understand what you're doing. You're going to ruin us." The mortgage lawyer called. "He says you can take our house." There it was, the truth. She wasn't worried I might be suffering. She was worried because she finally understood the cost of losing me. I replied, "Now you understand what it's worth to have me in your life. Too bad you learned too late." That afternoon, I met with the Swiss financial advisor. He was an older, very professional man named Herr Meyer, who helped me understand all my options for permanent residency in Switzerland. "With your current savings and your American pension," he explained, "you can live comfortably here for the rest of your life. Switzerland has excellent medical care programs for retired foreigners, and the quality of life is exceptional." For the first time in years, I spoke openly about my finances without worrying about saving money for Rebecca's emergencies. It was liberating to calculate my expenses based solely on my own needs and desires. "You can also invest part of your savings in the Swiss economy," Herr Meyer continued. "The returns are stable and secure. In 5 years, you could double your assets if you invest wisely." Double my assets. How many times had I had that opportunity? But I had preferred to spend the money on my daughter's whims. "Is there anything else I should tell you?" the advisor added. "We have many clients in situations similar to yours. Older people who have come to Switzerland looking for a new start after complicated family relationships. You are not alone in this experience." That information comforted me deeply. I wasn't the only mother who had been manipulated and discarded by ungrateful children. There was a whole community of people who had chosen their own happiness over the toxic demands of their families. On Friday morning, I joined a hiking group for older people. There were 8 women and 4 men, all between 60 and 75 years old, all looking for adventure and new experiences. During the bus ride, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Ingrid, a 71-year-old German who had arrived in Switzerland 2 years earlier. "What brought you here?" she asked me as we admired the landscape from the window. A daughter who told me that her greatest birthday wish was for me to die, I answered straight up without filters. I no longer had the energy to sugarcoat the reality. Ingrid looked at me with wide eyes. Seriously? Completely seriously. After financing her house, practically raising her children, and sacrificing my retirement for her needs, she told me that my presence in her life was an unbearable burden. My goodness, Ingrid murmured. And what did you do? What? She asked. I disappeared from her life, and here I am. Ingrid smiled with admiration. You are very brave. It took me 5 years to make the decision to walk away from my toxic family. My son and daughter-in-law treated me like an ATM with legs. For the rest of the day, Ingrid and I shared our stories. She had come to Switzerland after realizing that her adult children only contacted her when they needed money for their vacations, their new cars, or their whims. When she decided to set boundaries, they accused her of being a selfish mother and threatened not to let her see her grandchildren. The first few months were difficult, Ingrid confessed as we walked through a medieval town. Guilt ate me up. I thought maybe I was really selfish, that a good mother should always sacrifice for her children. And what changed your perspective? I asked. I realized that my children never wondered if I was happy, if I had enough money for my own needs, or if my constant sacrifices were hurting me. They only cared about what I could give them. That's not love, Giulietta. That's exploitation. Her words resonated deeply in my heart. For decades, I had confused emotional manipulation with filial love, constant demands with genuine need. That night in my apartment, I decided to turn on my phone for the last time in several days. I had 62 missed calls and 47 text messages. Most of them were from Rebecca and David, but there were also some from unknown numbers. I read the text messages chronologically, observing the evolution of my daughter's panic. The first ones were still emotional. Please, Mom, please come back. We need you. The kids are crying for you. But they gradually became more desperate and financial. The bank called us for a meeting on Friday. They say that as the co-signer, you have the right to reclaim the house. They can't take our house away for a misunderstanding. By the 5th day, the messages had become aggressive. This is ridiculous, Mom. You're ruining our lives over a tantrum. Act like an adult and come back. And finally, desperate. I called all the hospitals, the police, your friends. No one knows where you are. If something happens to you, it's going to be my fault. Please just tell me you're okay. It was fascinating to observe how at no point did Rebecca genuinely apologize for wishing me dead. At no point did she acknowledge the cruelty of her words or express real remorse. It all revolved around the negative consequences my absence had for her. I decided to reply one last message. I am perfectly fine and happier than I have been in years. What you are experiencing now are the natural consequences of your actions. I hope this experience helps you understand the value of the people you love before it's too late with anyone else in your life. The response came immediately. Please, Mom, we can fix this. I promise I'll never say horrible things again. Just come back. I wrote my final response. Empty promises don't mend broken hearts. Rebecca, the words you said to me revealed what you really think of me. You can't take that truth back with desperate promises. After sending that message, I blocked her number and all the numbers associated with David. I also blocked the unknown numbers that had been calling me. It was time to close that chapter for good. On Monday morning, I met again with Herr Meyer to sign the papers that would allow me to reside permanently in Switzerland. I also made arrangements to permanently transfer my American pension and begin the process of selling my apartment in my hometown. Are you sure you want to make this permanent? Herr Meyer asked me. It's a very big decision. I have never been more sure of anything in my life, I replied, signing each document with a firm hand. For the first time in decades, I am making decisions based on my own happiness, not on the demands of others. That afternoon, I received a call from Elvira, my dear neighbor and accomplice. Her voice sounded excited. Giulietta, you have to hear this, she said. Rebecca came to my apartment yesterday crying hysterically. She begged me to tell you to come back, that it had been a terrible misunderstanding. And what did you tell her? I asked. I told her the truth, that what she said to you was unforgivable, and that if I were you, I would have disappeared forever too. You should have seen her face when she realized that even her neighbors knew how cruel she had been to you. Did she mention anything about the financial problems? I asked with curiosity. Oh, yes. She said, without your help, they can't pay the mortgage, the bank is pressuring them, David can't find a stable job, and the kids need things for school they can't afford.